The entire Harry Potter universe pretty much orbits around one central point: Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Naturally, Hogwarts has a history so deep and decorated that the drama in the movies definitely comes as a surprise to no one. While the films might not dive too deeply into the school's origins, we know Hogwarts has a rich, almost too rich history, thanks to its legendary four founders: Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, Salazar Slytherin, and of course, Godric Gryffindor. These extraordinarily powerful witches and wizards didn't just create a school, they built an institution so impactful that their legacies continue to shape the magical world centuries later. They also got Hogwarts houses named after them. Each house comes with its own coat of arms, colors, traits, relics, and most importantly, these secrets and their very consequential ripple effects somehow trace back to the founders' lives, ambitions, and eventually, their demise. Now, there's always been an air of mystery surrounding these four legendary figures, but let's face it, if we're being brutally honest, almost everything that happens in the Harry Potter series is technically their fault. In fact, it's sort of crazy how deeply connected the events of the Harry Potter series, set centuries later, are to decisions these four made long ago. They're basically butterfly effect personified. And that's why today we're taking a closer look at these absolutely magical legends. We'll dive into who they were, what they did, and why they're still important enough for us to keep talking about them. But before we dive in, here's a quick non-magical request. Give us a like and hit that subscribe button. Helga Hufflepuff would absolutely bake you a plate of cookies for doing so. We're starting with Rowena Ravenclaw. And no, it's not just because Ravenclaws are the smartest, wittiest, and all-around brainiest bunch at Hogwarts, though that doesn't hurt. Rowena deserves the spotlight first because, of all the founders, she arguably had the most significant hand in actually making Hogwarts. According to legend, it was Rowena who chose the location for the school in the Scottish Highlands. She also reportedly came up with the school's name, helped design its forever-changing floor plan, and was even the one who pitched the idea of opening a magic school in the first place. It's safe to say Rowena was the architect behind Hogwarts. Alright, so here's how the story actually goes. Legend has it that Rowena Ravenclaw dreamt of a warty hog. Get it? Warty hog? Hogwarts? Alright, I'll let you figure that one out. The hog led her somewhere in the Highlands of Scotland, leading to her secluded spot in the Scottish Highlands. While the exact location remains a mystery, we do know it's sitting above the Black Lake in an absolutely gorgeous, yet not so mildly dangerous area, and that's where Hogwarts stands to this day, its name inspired by that peculiar dream. Judging by the kind of students Ravenclaw House produces, it's not hard to piece together the kind of person Rowena was, or the traits she valued most. She was famously wise, incredibly smart, and just a bit intimidating. Think of her as a strict teacher who radiates, "I want the best for you" energy, but doesn't sugarcoat a single thing. Kind, yet formidable. That said, Rowena also had a streak of pride that, frankly, got in her way more often than not. She was a proud woman, almost too proud, and there were moments when that trait ended up costing her dearly. One prime example of Rowena's pride coming back to haunt her can be dated back to Rowena's relic. The infamous diadem that Voldemort later used as a Horcrux was actually a Ravenclaw relic that was said to enhance the wearer's wisdom by a great deal. Unfortunately, it also became the source of one of her greatest heartbreaks. Rowena's daughter, Helena Ravenclaw, was reported to have stolen said relic in a fit of jealousy, abandoning both her mother and Hogwarts. Till her death, Rowena's pride did not let her disclose that information to her peers. Her daughter also refused to return back to her mother, even when the latter was on her deathbed. It is said that Rowena died considerably earlier than other founders because of her broken heart. In short, Rowena Ravenclaw wasn't just one of the founders, she was the founder who laid the intellectual groundwork, literally and figuratively, for everything Hogwarts would become. But before we jump into the other founders, don't forget to like and subscribe. Our content might not be diadem level informative, but it's definitely getting there. All 4 of the founders had specific traits that made them stand out. 3 of these founders demanded their students have the same traits. Helga Hufflepuff, however, did not. While most people validly consider Godric Gryffindor the noblest of the founders, perhaps the real noble one among them was Helga. Helga was the second main founder of Hogwarts, known for her kindness, sympathy, loyalty, and compassion. She was notably the most accepting person out of the 4 founders and literally did only good. Helga was also famously good at food-related charms and still has her recipes widely used in Hogwarts today. Like we mentioned before, Helga Hufflepuff was known for her kind, gentle nature. She was warm, compassionate, and was a very big advocate for equality. In fact, while there were some very generic noble traits she preferred her students had, like, again, hardworking, kind, and loyal, she literally took in everyone without any discrimination. If her students didn't have the signature Hufflepuff qualities, it didn't matter. She treated them all equally. She was known to frequently wear the colors yellow and blue that later became the signature colors of House Hufflepuff, and had blue eyes and brown hair. She was also round and plump and probably had a large appetite, something that can be chalked up to her affinity for food-related charms. Helga Hufflepuff's kindness and dedication to equality wasn't just limited to humans or Hogwarts students. She was one of the first witches to openly stand up for house elves, a group that has consistently faced heavy discrimination since essentially the start of time. Helga didn't just advocate for them, she actively set an example by hiring them to work in the Hogwarts kitchens, and the best part was, she didn't do it out of pity. She did it to provide them a safe place where they could work without fearing for their lives. Her relic was a small golden cup that was rumored to have unknown magical powers, and over time, it was passed down to the Smith family, who were allegedly Helga's only known living descendants. The cup, like we all know, later got into the hands of Voldemort and was turned into a Horcrux. Perhaps the most controversial of the 4 founders was the man who gave Slytherin House its name, Salazar Slytherin. Honestly, we wouldn't be too far off in saying that much of what the Harry Potter universe endured can be traced back to actions Salazar took, which was driven by his deep-seated resentment. Salazar Slytherin had an unhealthy obsession with blood purity. He didn't consider Muggle-born wizards to be, well, wizards at all, and had an open, hostile disdain for them. He was also a staunch advocate for the dark arts and fully supported teaching them to students. At the time, the unforgivable curses weren't illegal, so he taught his students those as well. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to Salazar's personality, and most of it isn't flattering. His traits can be traced back down his bloodline, eventually resurfacing in his infamous heir, Voldemort. And unlike those other founders, his legacy isn't a noble one. Salazar was cunning, with an ambition so overwhelming that it ended up causing countless problems, not just in his own time, but for generations of students to come. He prized these same traits in his students and was unapologetically discriminatory. He prioritized pure-blood wizards and outright refused to allow Muggle-borns into his house. Even centuries later, having a Muggle-born in Slytherin remained almost unheard of. These morally dubious traits came with their own equally dark actions. Salazar's pride wasn't the dignified kind, like Rowena's. It was more villainous and vindictive. This same vindictive pride was evident in many Slytherin students later on, most notably Draco Malfoy, and of course, Voldemort himself. Salazar Slytherin doesn't have a decorated history. It's more like a history drenched in darkness, to be honest. Throughout his time at Hogwarts, Salazar held divisive views about who should be allowed to study there. He believed Muggle-borns had no place at the school and advocated for a policy of only admitting students with at least one magical parent. Naturally, the other founders rejected the idea outright, leading to growing tensions among them. According to legend, these disagreements escalated to the point where Salazar and Godric Gryffindor possibly dueled over it. When he didn't get his way, Salazar left Hogwarts and reportedly never returned. But as with most things tied to Salazar, it wasn't that simple. Before leaving, he secretly created the infamous Chamber of Secrets. Within it, he hid a basilisk, breeding it for the sole purpose of one day being unleashed by his heir. His ultimate goal? To rid Hogwarts of any Muggle-born wizards. As we know, Tom Riddle, later known as Voldemort, became that heir. We also know what Tom Riddle went on to do, not only as himself, but as the Dark Lord. He eventually turned Salazar's relic, a locket engraved with the letter S, into a Horcrux, and the rest, as they say, is history. But if you still want to be a Slytherin after all that, prove your cunning and ambition by subscribing. Even Salazar would admit it's a power move. Perhaps the most leader-like of the four founders of Hogwarts was Godric Gryffindor, a man renowned in history for his valor, strength, and combat versatility. You could say he was the most non-wizard-like of the founders. Not in a bad way, though. Godric stood out because he didn't rely solely on magic to get the job done. He embraced physical combat, something the other founders were less familiar with, and it made him an absolute unit. The famous sorting hat that decides students' houses once belonged to Godric. He and the other founders agreed that it was the perfect way to preserve their legacy and ensure fair sorting even after their deaths. The hat, originally a simple piece of clothing, became sentient when the founders enchanted it with their collective powers, creating a non-discriminatory system that would last through the ages. Godric Gryffindor was essentially a lion in human form. He had the traits of one: bravery, strength, and fairness, and even looked the part. His house coat of arms prominently features a lion, and his intimidating presence was matched by his looks. He was a muscular man with fiery red hair and beard, and was often seen wielding a sword instead of a wand. This versatility made him truly unique among the founders. Both Godric and his students were defined by courage, strength, and an unwavering sense of justice. He was also remarkably open-minded about Muggle-born wizards, perhaps even more so than the other founders. Godric made it his mission to ensure that Hogwarts welcomed Muggle-borns, even at the cost of his friendship with Salazar Slytherin, whose opposing views ultimately drove the two apart. Despite his kind and open nature, Godric was fierce and unforgiving when the situation demanded it. He had no qualms about raising his sword when necessary, and was known for his confrontations with those who tested him. One example in history can be dated back when he faced the Goblin King to get his sword back, the one that the king first forged and then stole. While he wasn't violent by nature, Godric was more than capable of standing his ground when it was needed of him. Godric Gryffindor's relic was unique among the founders because it wasn't turned into a Horcrux. Instead, his goblin-forged sword that was adorned with rubies became a tool to destroy these Horcruxes. The sword's most remarkable trait was its ability to copy the properties of whoever and whatever it encountered. When Harry used it to kill the basilisk, the sword absorbed the creature's venom, giving it the power to destroy Horcruxes. Interestingly, the sword could only be wielded by a true Gryffindor. It shared a deep bond with the sorting hat, since both were Godric's relics, and whenever a true Gryffindor needed it, the sword would appear from inside the hat. Godric's legacy was preserved by the later main characters of the series, including Harry himself. And that's the story of the four founders, basically the original Hogwarts squad. Whether it's Rowena's pride, Salazar's obsession, Helga's kindness, or Godric's sword, these legends shaped the wizarding world in ways even Voldemort couldn't completely undo. And while their stories might be a bit chaotic, one thing's for sure: there would be no Hogwarts without them. Catch you next time.